Yeah, it says unsignalized for hidden pond. And that's what pisses me off. Like, they don't care enough to even get the hand.
What's your preferred?
Well, I guess now it's
Yeah.
So this meeting will be recorded as a whole group at a table level. It's kind of hard to record, but we'll try to capture your input as much as possible. But if you do want to go back and watch the video of this beginning part, we'll be able to post that on YouTube. You'll notice that at the front, there's a sheet that says important info for participants. The link to that YouTube site will be on there. Thanks. You have the. So I want to welcome everybody to the neighborhood meeting for the Ziegler-Corbett project. This neighborhood meeting is going to be a little bit different than ones we normally do because we have an interesting kind of traffic situation that we'd like to get your input on and we want to have a discussion about, which we'll get to in a little bit. First, we're going to start off with some general information to make sure everybody's questions are answered before we start our discussion about the project, about the traffic situation, and about kind of the general traffic plans for Fort Collins as a whole. So this is our agenda for the evening. We're going to try to leave the most amount of time for the discussion process because that's really why we're here tonight. But we will make sure that all of your questions are answered and you don't leave here feeling like you still don't really know what's going on. So.
Thanks, Em. So
no, I'm going to pass it on to Ryan. He's going to talk about the project from the planning side a little bit. We also have our applicants here tonight, so they can talk about it from their side as well.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Mounts. I'm the planner here at the city. So as Em mentioned, there's kind of a little bit of different ground to cover tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about sort of what's being proposed, what the process is, and as Em mentioned, especially from the city perspective, what's being proposed has led to an opportunity to really examine some of the traffic and connectivity issues in this kind of area. And so we want to kind of share a couple of different scenarios and ideas with you, gather input on that, and that's going to be an ongoing process. So hopefully many of you received the letter for the neighborhood meeting tonight. And what you probably saw in there is that this is a major amendment for what's called an overall development plan, or an ODP for short. And so the ODP for this project, called Ziegler-Corbett, was approved earlier in 2022, I guess last year now. And an ODP is really kind of a master plan for a site. So it's kind of laying the high level framework for what future development might look like and what kind of characteristics it might have. So it kind of outlines things like what types of land uses are going to be approved for that site, some of those different transportation connections, like where the main access points are going to be things like where stormwater will be located. So again, kind of those high level details. Even if an ODP is approved, it doesn't grant any sort of what we call vesting or approvals for actual physical construction. That would still have to come later during what we call project development plan reviews. And so those would occur for individual phases in the future. And so again, for the Ziegler-Corbett project, there was already an ODP approved in 2022. Many of you may have kind of been involved in some of the neighborhood meetings and public hearings for that project. And so the land uses for that ODP, it was kind of a mixed use project. So different types of residential dwellings, also some office space and a childcare center. You can see kind of the range there between 400 and 700 units. The primary access point, not the only, but the primary access point was off Ziegler Road, kind of split between Hidden Pond and kind of what we call the service access for Front Range Village, so that kind of service road that runs behind Target. And then there was also kind of a big piece of that approval was a bike and pedestrian connection north to English Ranch, but no vehicular connection. So just kind of, so we're all on the same page. It's just kind of an aerial and show some of the zoning around the site. So the original ODP boundaries is what you see outlined in red. And then as part of the major amendment that we're discussing tonight, they want to add or incorporate some additional property into that boundary, and that's what's shown in yellow. So the major amendment is really being triggered by basically expanding the boundary of this ODP. And this is what the ODP drawing itself looked like. And so you could see those different kind of bubbles, the A, B, C, D. those represented where different land uses were going to go. So kind of more on the top of the north, were residential, kind of lower intensity residential land uses. On the south were the higher intensity residential land uses. And then east, kind of up along Ziegler, were some of the commercial land uses. And you can see, let's see if this works here. This was kind of at the time the primary access point. Again, you can see Hidden Pond would have been like right up here. And this is kind of the service entrance to Front Range Village is down here. And the other thing to note is, there was a bike and pedestrian access only north, potentially up to Paddington here in English Ranch. And so one of the features of that main access point in this original ODP was they were going to use what's called a channelized T intersection. And so this is just kind of a diagram of what this looks like. And so it did still allow full movement at both Hidden Pond and this channelized T. And you can see there was kind of some medians, some kind of, if you will, kind of almost acceleration, deceleration lanes, and kind of some places to enter to help with some of those left turn movements. An example of this type of intersection, you can find it at Timberline and Milestone. There's kind of a small version of this kind of as you exit that gas station right there, kind of close to Timberline and Harmony. So this evening, we're talking about this major amendment to this existing ODP, and I wanted to highlight what some of those changes are. So the first one I already mentioned is that, and what's kind of really triggering this is that they want to incorporate some additional property into that ODP. That means this has to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. As part of incorporating that additional property, sort of one of the ideas is that the access point to this site could shift north and align with Hidden Pond. That's typically something we either require or really like to see at the city in terms of sort of traffic standards. Is we really want to see those different streets and driveways kind of align and not kind of have those offset intersections. And so along with that kind of realignment to Hidden Pond, the other potential with that is that there could be a privately funded street light or stoplight at that location. But that also comes with some other kind of considerations and trade-offs that we want to talk to all of you about. With the ODP and this additional property that's looking to be incorporated, there's no changes to the types of land uses being proposed or the intensity. It's really just kind of expanding that boundary and then kind of looking and working through some of these different changes to potentially connectivity and traffic. Again, as mentioned, this major amendment to the ODP will be eventually going back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their kind of review, and they are the decision maker for this type of project. And so, especially if you received a mailed notice for this neighborhood meeting, you will also receive a mailed notice when that hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled. So, kind of before we talk about some of the different scenarios this evening, I wanted to also back up, and there's kind of a lot of history here to some of this. Especially for some of those of you who may have lived, especially in English Ranch, over the last several decades or so. Even before English Ranch was fully developed, so the southern portions and Front Range Village was developed, the city has what we call the Master Street Plan. And this is a map, and it kind of guides the long-range vision for the city's collector and arterial street network. And prior iterations of this had sort of anticipated that, working here, that Corbett Drive, which is a collector street, would run from Harmony Road and eventually connect up to Paddington. You can kind of see it kind of does an S curve here, and it would eventually connect with Paddington. And so that was kind of the long range vision for this area. But as Front Range Village developed, it was kind of a change from what was originally anticipated in this area, and the southern portions of English Ranch as well, which used to be employment zoning. So as some of those changes occurred, and especially as Front Range Village was going through development review process, there was a lot of concerns heard from the neighborhood and neighbors about the potential for cut through traffic getting to Front Range Village. And so that was shared with City Council in about 2010 or so when they were doing an update to the Master Street Plan. And Council ultimately decided to remove that sort of Master Street Plan connection, showing that on the map. And so that's why Corbett never extended up to Paddington like many years ago, the map illustrated here. What was sort of left unresolved was whether there would be a local street connection to Paddington from this ODP site. We do have standards and requirements in our land use code, which are development standards, that if a site is long enough, has enough width with another site like this one, typically it does trigger those types of local street connections. But given some of the history here with kind of removing that connection when Front Range Village went in, when this ODP was originally going through approval and review last year, we sort of decided and heard input from the neighborhood that still didn't want that connection, so it became bike and ped. So this is kind of a summary of, from the review last year with the original ODP, what we heard related to sort of traffic and connectivity. A lot of concerns about, again, neighborhood cut through traffic, if that vehicular connection is there. A lot of concerns and sort of frustration about some of the different intersections there along Ziegler, but especially about Paddington and being able to make left-hand turns or left-hand movements, especially at busy times of day. Also a desire for better kind of bike and ped access across Ziegler. So how, do we have to go half a mile out of our way to cross Ziegler? Some of the issues kind of thinking about this from kind of the city staff side is, as we're thinking about this, and some of this is a little bit intuitive as well, but it's very difficult to address all of these concerns together without thinking about, is there a potential bike crossing or signal somewhere along this stretch of Ziegler? Right now, the intersection of Ziegler and Paddington on its own doesn't currently warrant a signal. There's lots of different criteria related to like safety and crashes and just how much traffic there is, how many movements are going on. Right now, it's not meeting those warrants without some additional connectivity there. But without having that vehicular connection, that's likely never to occur. And then English Ranch is essentially built out. If there was a connection, though, that kind of goes against what we heard from the neighborhood, that we really don't want that connection at all. It kind of disturbs that concern about cut through traffic. So with this major amendment to the ODP and the new alignment potentially for access kind of at Ziegler and Hidden Pond, again, it might create an opportunity to put a signal there at that intersection. When you kind of look at the traffic, this site will generate, maybe some of the Infinity traffic just to the west, as well as some of the traffic across Ziegler that's using Hidden Pond. It might warrant a light at that intersection as well, and it might be a privately funded light because those are two kind of private streets. So that might help address some of those traffic and connectivity issues, but it doesn't, solve everything. And especially for those that have a lot of frustration with the Paddington and Ziegler intersection, it doesn't really resolve that particular issue. So the other thing to just kind of keep in mind is that this is kind of the last, obviously, vacant piece in kind of this kind of quadrant, this area. And so a lot of the puzzle pieces are already in place in terms of what's been developed. And so this is kind of the last opportunity to kind of fine tune and look at some of these issues. So, before we get into the scenarios, this is kind of our main focus for this evening. A lot of times with our neighborhood meetings, we definitely want to open it up to any and all questions, but as staff, we're really interested in your kind of input on some of these traffic and connectivity scenarios tonight. We have kind of 3 scenarios we want to share, and we'll go over them in detail. You also have some information at your tables. Important to point out that no scenario is going to solve every issue or every concern. Each of them have trade-offs. From the kind of staff perspective, we think each of these different scenarios has elements that are implementable. So we really want all of you to kind of be in the driver's seat with your input on kind of what's going to, push maybe one scenario over another, or if there's other ideas that we can talk about. And then, there's no decision being made tonight. We're really here just to kind of start the process of gathering input and kind of sharing information. So if you notice, oh, I think my neighbor should really hear about this, or I'm on an HOA board and it'd be great to talk more about this, we're definitely available and would love to kind of have some more conversations about this. So before we go into maybe the scenario discussion, can we just kind of open it up? Are there any questions about the major amendments, about prior approvals, about the review process, anything we can help answer along those lines first?
I wanted to know why, like you were saying, we don't warrant having a bike or pedestrian crossing across Ziegler right now, because it's very busy right there. But I was just wondering, because you were mentioning there's no safety thing there right now. There's not been enough crashes and stuff like that. What does it take? I don't understand, like the new land development they're doing there right by Bacon Elementary School on Timberline. They put a big tunnel down there for that connection there. Why do they warrant and we don't warrant here? Because we definitely got a whole lot more people in this area.
Yeah. So, and we do have some staff here from both engineering and traffic operations, so I might pass some of these questions off to them. At least to start off with, though, so the warrant I was talking about was more for just like a traditional kind of light. For something like a ped and bike only sort of crossing, that is something that has recently been identified. So The city just updated what we call our active modes plan. It's kind of our bike and pedestrian master plan. And it identified along this stretch of Ziegler a need for one of those types of facilities. But
So that's something that may be in the plans for the next year or two, or?
I don't know if that particular one has any like funding right now for that, but it's identified that, hey, we recognize there's a need here. We want to do something about that. And then kind of to your second question about kind of what are the criteria, Tyler, I don't know, do you want to, or Steve, do you want to mention anything, or is there, did I kind of cover it?
We can talk more detail if you want. Happy to. I understand this. So I think when we talk about the active modes plan implementation, right now it's sort of a short, mid, and long-term implementation strategy. Right? So in terms of timeline for that. Timeline. In terms of the warrants, it would be generally peak hour traffic volume or daily volume of warrants and signal. Numbers of cars right at the intersection. And it's really driven by the site experience. Plenty of traffic on Ziegler. It's how traffic in the world. Right? A lot of people probably aren't using that connection of Paddington. It's so hard to do. The number might be artificially low. That definitely increases the warrant, but it doesn't. Not quite there.
So that underpass for the bikes and pedestrians or the Beacon Elementary, this new development, why was that deemed necessary? Because it's attached to the school?
That's a great question. I don't know.
As far as I know, it's part of a regional trail, and that's where anytime we're doing a capital project, this was identified as a long-term capital project before laning of Timberline, essentially from Battle Creek all the way down to Trilby. And so as they're doing those bigger capital projects, it's identified as a need that's existing. And so that's why it was probably incorporated into that project. And it's just one that it's a regional trail. It's going to be crossing through there, so that kind of puts on higher priority.
If you have some funding, we got some grant funding for.
Yeah.
It's troubling to me that Hidden Pond, there are 8 homes back there. That's really justified in my eyes, and I think, how can that be signalized when you've got Woodland Park Estates playing Russian roulette every morning, every evening? And we live in English Ranch, coming here, that right turn, you've got so many people going 40, 45, 50, crossing lanes, just making an uncontrolled right turn out of there, especially in the evening, dusk, it's really gross. But I don't know, to me it's goofy. 8 homes versus Woodland Park Estates who've been there over 20 years. You know, it's just, something's wrong in Denmark with this.
So
I
I'll,
think.
yeah, I'll invite any of our, especially traffic folks, to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it, the potential light there at Hidden Pond, I don't think it's really being driven so much by the traffic on the east side. So what the Hidden Pond states, it's really, this particular site, and because it would be more of a straight shot with like affinity, and potentially as well, there might be some Front Range Village traffic using it as well. There might be just enough there to kind of warrant that.
Which that makes sense. I totally get that. But I just think there's a better way to make everyone aware on that lane. And I really think there's an opportunity to make a marquee entrance to the proposed project using a signalized intersection at Paddington, Ziegler. You could do some really nice work there to welcome somebody home, that kind of thing. Welcome to our development. So I don't know. I think Woodland Park they need to be represented. They've been getting a shot forever. So I used to be a UPS driver, and I'd have to cross that from neighborhood to neighborhood. Still is, and it's getting worse.
I saw a couple hands up back here first, and then one right here, and then we'll go over here. So yes.
Dan Westfall. I was on the board of Woodland Park Estates 20 years ago, and this has been an issue for us for that long. And, I just want to say we asked that we worked with you guys, and it didn't have the numbers like you said to be able to put a traffic lights in there. But it's even worse. Back then, it used to be a merge lane, kind of a center lane, like Grand Peacock, where we can just make a left-hand turn, stay in the center, and merge in. Now we're forced to go out, in suburban, do the same thing there. That's not ideal. You better have a traffic light, so you don't have to scoot out to the center, look for a spot, and then go. I know it's scared the heck out of a lot of people. So yeah, I'm all for putting light in.
Yes.
So this is all being driven as a density, right? So where's the analysis of density versus traffic impact? What is the density level that we would have to actually have this agenda?
So a lot of the density requirements are driven by zoning districts. And so in this particular zone district, Harmony Border 1, there's actually a minimum density. This particular project is proposing, over that minimum density, which is about 7 units per acre. There is that fine balance there that because we're at the ODP stage, there's a wide range of what could ultimately be developed on this site. And your question about what's kind of the density driving some of this. I mean, the site being developed is driving a lot of that. And that's, the question is kind of the primary access to the site. How is it best served? How are the access points to these other neighborhoods being served as well? And, this is kind of really, we're wanting to re-examine all of this because again, this is kind of the last puzzle piece in this area. We've heard already some of the frustrations over the past year about making some of those movements onto Ziegler, and also the history of the connection or not here.
Scenarios. So there had to be that analysis of density versus traffic that to propose these 3 options.
Yeah, and there, during both the
Where
ODP.
is that? We're kind of needing, I'd like to see that analysis.
Yeah, there are some traffic studies out there looking at kind of first at this ODP level, and then if there are individual PDP or project development plan stages, it'll be at that level as well. And so we have those available. If you'd like them, we can send you a copy.
Well, why didn't you compare? You're proposing options.
Yes, those studies have already been done, and we have some kind of experts in the room that we can kind of, if you have specific questions, we can kind of ask them.
That's what I just asked. What is the matrix?
Tyler, or I'm not sure, I don't know from the applicant side, you guys want to talk about kind of the analysis piece for the traffic studies?
Yeah, I'm not a traffic engineer. My name is Jason Fitzgerald with Landmark Homes. So I can't, Mark, I can't speak to your, traffic specific question. I guess what I would highlight is that, again, the ODP is approved with the channel agency, right? So we've gone through that process. And now we're at a stage, as Ryan and the staff is proposing, is to try to figure out potentially where's the best location for a signal, because we're prepared to put a signal at Hidden Pond. Now that we were able to capture that property, that was that yellow block, before we didn't have access to that property, so we wouldn't be able to make a Hidden Pond connection. So to the city's, I think, benefit, or to their, I appreciate what they're trying to do, is now reach out to the community that is most affected, is because the demand, the issue that you're all concerned about really exists now. And granted, when we show up, there'll be more traffic, so it's going to be more. But the point is, the issue that you have that exists, where would a light go to solve the issue you have now? And kind of paired with that is, where does that shift based on us coming to the table? Again, so I'm not really answering your questions about the data. We had a traffic study done that identified how many movements at peak hours through our property and what that does to the traffic on Ziegler. And with the addition of the new parcel, we're much more closer to warrants for a signal at Hidden Pond. That's why we're in agreement that that's where we would put a light.
Yeah, it's not big solution. It's a vehicle connection.
Right. Yeah, so that's really, we all understand that that's a sensitive issue. We're okay, as I believe one of the options shows, that that there's not a connection to Paddington, and we would put a light at Hidden Pond, and traffic engineers could better discuss the benefit of movement at Paddington, because at least there's some control along Ziegler that might buy people time to get out on the Ziegler now that there's a stoplight even at Hidden Pond. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so if the staff wants to embellish upon that, maybe so.
Could you please speak up? Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to share this with you if you want. The traffic studies online. Really, the volumes on Paddington, like I mentioned before, some of them is operating electronic volume. That's probably not anything else. So, I think we need to look at some of these scenarios.
I'm still trying to play catch up. I think was there a question here?
I just wondered if those two properties, Woodland Park and Hidden Pond, is there a pass through for those developments?
No.
I wish there were eminent domain. Or somebody wants.
And let's go here.
I think what is troubling to most of us who live on both sides of Ziegler there is we've got, I don't know, 800,000 right there between the two neighborhoods. I'm not sure how many totally. Of course, we actually have more than that because we have people in Sunstone and other areas, and that's where Mile Hoop still cut through sometimes all the way to Paddington to go out that way. But the thing is, it seems like the pre-existing residents, we don't matter. What matters is the 400 to 700 that are coming in this one little section, that they matter more than we who are already there, you know. So ever since that roundabout went in at Horsetooth and Ziegler, traffic has increased, but it also never stops. There is never a stop. If there was an actual light there, traffic would stop. And then we would feel those brakes better. But we don't feel a brake. And it's really hard even to make a right-hand turn and forget a left. We mostly give up on this. So, you know, that's very concerning. I have another concern on seeing this, you know, when you have the map up of the plan. Well, when you went ahead and approved 4 stories, but that was only supposed to be the right there by Target. But I'm seeing 2 to 4 in section B and A 2 to 3, which I thought everything up by English Ranch was 2-story. And then as it moved away, it got to 3-story. But you got 4-story possibility right there in B, which is really close. I thought it was only going to be in C.
This is the approved ODPs from 2022. And so, yeah, the lower intensity areas are
Yeah, I
focused
was
here.
at that meeting.
And then you're correct. So the full 4 stories was approved for this kind of C area, kind of down here near where Target is. And then this parcel right here, it's shown as 2 to 4. The 4-story though, you can't see there's some text cut off here. There are conditions attached to that though, that they're not full 4 stories. They're more like decks and patios.
Well, I thought all the 4 stories was decks, patio.
No, so down here was 4 stories. Those could be full 4 stories, and these are the and I'm not sure if you want to mention what that looks like, but there are conditions attached to that up here in parcel B.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the product that is planned for B, at least a portion of B, is it's a 3-story product with rooftop decks on a portion of the units, but it's limited because there's some restrictions on how many can have the rooftop decks. So that's what's happening.
So
in
those are
B. And that's what-
open deck type stuff.
Yeah, so there's a
actual
stair
homes.
corridor to get up there. So it would be the kind of the loft / stair hole to the deck of the unit below it. So, and this is exactly what we discussed that evening at planning. So
Yeah, I didn't think anything was on that side.
And again, it's just from that boundary that would be where you see that bike ped connection to the east. But I know that the city really wants to focus on the traffic, so I think maybe we just stay in that.
We can, yeah, so let's try, I know there's still some hands up, but I want to go to this gentleman back, I think, and then we'll finish up these. And then, you know, I can stay after, we can answer as many questions, but we really also would like to kind of zoom in on some of these kind of traffic scenarios as well. So yes, sir.
So she mentions the traffic circle. I've heard that you're gonna remove the traffic circle at Horseshoe and Ziegler. Is that true?
That might be Tyler, Steve, anything on that?
Not to my knowledge.
I got that from you, Ryan, a while back. So I thought
I
that
think,
was-
so,
There's a planned improvements there to add additional lane, possibly a slip lane, like a left turn lane. And some of those, but I don't think that project's moving forward at this point.
So no changes.
At this point, I mean, there, of course, there's also the property to the northeast of the roundabout that could potentially develop, that could warrant sort of changes at the roundabout. But I don't think within our capital group, we're looking at making those changes at this point.
and I think,
They said if they develop the northeast.
so yeah,
portion, then that's
some of you
what
remember
goes back.
Nicole, who
But that's separate.
was at some of the prior neighborhood meetings. I think that's what she mentioned is that land that's northeast of the roundabout, it's the proposal hasn't really been moving forward, but it was called like Strauss Lakes, I think, and mentioned that if that is developed in any capacity, they would be looking at the roundabout there for some improvements, and depending on what goes there and sort of that background condition, maybe looking at something like a light. But I think that really would be tied to potentially that development.
Well, I think if you're not going to change the roundabout, it makes a light along here even more important. Right? Break it up so we don't have to try. Right now, like everybody's pointed out, we're kind of running the gauntlet and dribble of cars that come through the way too efficient traffic circle.
That's really what we're looking at. When the city came in, one of the thing is, with the proximity of adding to hit lawn, it's really not conducive for two lanes. So while it would be great if we had access for both of you, we really need to put one in. When the connection to Permanent Village wasn't made, we're really looking at, okay, we need to provide a connection possibly for this development, this vacant piece of land. But if there's a possibility of connecting with Paddington, then you kind of serve it both. You're serving English Ranch, you're serving the east side. That's why we want to look at these scenarios, because with that option, you're kind of serving a whole group as opposed to just more of this development in Permanent Village. So that's why we're here tonight, to really gain just some feedback from you folks that are here to kind of share your experience and see, you know, these are our options of what we can do, but the option of two lights is probably not.
Well, and the second thing is if there is a light at Paddington, does that automatically mean you've got that connection for vehicles to?
Yeah, why can't they just
What I'm
keep like
seeing.
the
Well,
original plan?
The thing is, this is a privately funded, they're not gonna pay for your traffic.
Right, I know. I'm just pointing that out just because
That's kind of the point.
it's a necessary thing. I know a lot of us would like a light on Paddington, but we also don't want the connection for the traffic because of the way it's going to mess with traffic. So I think that's just an important point to be thinking about. You can't have both, right? Because it's their traffic light that they're paying for their stuff.
Well, not the city's just.
What's that?
Yeah. So what was analysis?
So I'm going to kind of refocus us back up here. I know we have a couple more questions, and then we're going to try and kind of go over the scenarios real quick and kind of break into groups so we can get to more discussion. And you can see we have kind of hopefully what is a small army of staff here, so we can go around and answer kind of individually some of these questions that are popping up. So yes.
I'm Dan Bartran. I've got interest in both areas. I've got property in Hidden Pond as well as industrial use. I've got the vacant 1 acre ground right there. Traffic, you know, honestly, I would suggest that the city or the developer put together what it would look like both ways so that the people who are going to be impacted by this could also see if you put it at Hidden Pond or if you put it at Paddington, how that could improve their life right now. Right now, it kind of stinks because I go in and out there all the time, but I would be more interested in is there a substantial impact if it's put at Paddington compared to Hidden Pond without an evaluation? Would benefit the community better. On my property in English Ranch, I would ask that the city be sensitive since we've asked for meetings and interviews with the developer because we're intending on continuing our one-story ranches in that last 1 acre part and to put up 3.5, 4-story units near it. I think you should continue to the next dash line and respect future residents as well as the existing ones. I think that would only be fair.
And they've been waiting a long time.
Okay, that's okay. So this is really more of a clarifying question. So I'm hearing that privately funded traffic light, Hidden Pond is a private road. Are the roads in this development going to be private roads as well? Why is it privately funded? Is the city just squeezing the developer? What's the story?
I think it's undetermined if which or if all or any of the streets are going to be public versus private in this particular proposal. This is simplifying it a little bit, but the city does have what we call a street oversizing. So when development puts in new public streets, if they're larger than local streets, they get reimbursed for kind of the difference between what it costs to put in a local street versus like a collector or an arterial. And some of those funds can also be used if a development is putting in something like a light as well. But because in this particular location, at least at Hidden Pond, if it is private on both sides, it's not at a collector street, it's not at the traditional kind of half-mile distance for a light. It would really be upon the applicants or the developers to put that.
So they pay to put it in and then you take it over.
Is that accurate? Is the city maintain the private ones after the initial capital cost?
Okay. Thank you.
We say privately funded, it should be provided by the developer. Not a privately owned.
Is this going to be enough?
They're shaking their heads. Yeah. Okay, we really want to get to, but I don't want to cut people off. So 2 very quickly, and then we're really going to move into kind of the.
Just looking at possible solution.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about the positive. It's like you have 6 access points, 3 cul-de-sac, and then a couple of parcels.
Yeah, and I can actually.
So I was thinking before I came that it would be good to take the furthest to the right and access across that retention pond. That have to be done. But this gentleman in front of me just showed me a proposal that's even better, where it's got a center median that you can't make a left-hand turn. You have to make a right for the light at Paddington, and you go left or right from there. Seems like that would be an ideal solution to this that could, be good for the new development, good for the folks in English Ranch, be good for Woodland Park. Did you see his proposal?
Yes, we've talked before, and I appreciate the thought and kind of the effort that's gone into that. And we have talked kind of
I just saw it tonight.
yeah, about that. For those kind of curious, basically the idea is could there be a connection maybe here-ish, and then that would kind of serve to essentially put the light at Paddington and kind of it would warrant it. The issue that we kind of are facing is, that is going through a detention area, the English Ranch detention pond. This whole area, some of the prior developments, they were done decades ago. They don't meet kind of current standards. They're kind of undersized for stormwater. And so if you're putting, a road through there and reducing the stormwater area, that's a concern.
The developer is going to take control of that parcel, so I don't see any reason that detention area can't be shifted further south to update and meet the current code, right? And I still think that could be beautified there instead of a plain old ugly detention pond. Make it a marquee entrance. you know, there's so much that can be done with that, to me, I mean, and I want to ask something real quick, density, wasn't there, the Harmony Corridor Plan was amended, right? Did it not used to have that density requirement?
That's always been there. What was recently amended about the Harmony Corridor Plan was the gateway area out near I-25.
Well, from what I understand, it was approved that density helps the city meet the green, whatever, I don't know what that is. It's having that density with that many solar panels and all these green features helps the city meet a goal that is near and dear. I mean, we're a great city and it's you know, a feather in our cap to have that, but we're the sacrificial lamb. We're gonna get hammered with that density. And I don't know how you can shoot. English Ranch, there are 458 homes, I think, maybe I'm wrong, 548, something like that, 558. Squeeze even more into that red border area. It's insanity. And yeah, it might meet some energy goals, that's wonderful, but at what cost? You know, and it really reduces the livability and desirability, in my opinion. I brag about it, the walkability to the shopping center. You get 25 restaurants you can walk to. That roundabout's already a disaster there. The traffic. And I don't know, I mean, I know it's neither here nor there, that part of it, but it just seems like you're cool to jam that much.
That's actually a really good idea. Storm detention could be brought over to the south.
And beautified. And I know that's east of your parcel, and I think, yeah, and I mean, that could be a nice little buffer, a nice little break. I mean, there's so much that can be done with it. I mean, it's a blank canvas that's just really make that a nice corner.
You've already got the drainage going out, it can be utilized by both possibly. At least one's good.
Well, that I will say, just, you know, I'm also not a stormwater engineer, so I can't really comment on this tonight. There would have to be a lot more study here in the idea.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. Can we do a quick poll? I know hands keep going up. Obviously, our original idea was try and talk about this a little bit more in small groups. Are people wanting to do that? Are we wanting to just stay focused as we are right now? Any kind of strong feelings either way?
I think there's a benefit to talking as a large group because we hear everybody's concerns. Whereas if we break into small groups, it's in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. I just want to mention to folks, you have your little placemats in front of you with the information. You've also got pens and stickers. Feel free to draw all over those if you have ideas. Use the maps and show us what you think could happen in that space, and we will collect those at the end. There's also comment space. You can use the stickers if you want to put a sticker next to an option that you really like. You're welcome to do that. I apologize, I messed up the images with the option labels, so just go by the words rather than the images if you're going to vote on which option you like. But we'll just continue answering questions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, and instead of doing that, because I don't want to play with stickers and draw things, but can you just take a vote of who likes his plan? And I'll vote for that. There's probably other people that would also.
Is there a way we could get it up on an overhead?
Yeah, well, one second. So Sophie, did you want to answer
Hi,
something?
Sophie Buckingham with the City Engineering Department. I just wanted to clarify with this.
Can you speak up, please?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe
Yes,
it's-
okay.
We can't hear you.
Okay, with the stormwater detention question, are you talking about the little sliver of existing stormwater pond that's just south of Paddington? So that property is not going to be taken over by the developer? I just wanted to clarify that because I think that was part of what you were talking
Right.
about.
We have, from what I understand, our HOA just needs to give approval for that to be walked on, looked at, you know, assessed, preliminary, anything. That's kind of stalled out. I don't know why. I'd be happy to pursue that. I mean, I think our HOA would donate that land. I'm serious. If we could get something to work there, we don't need it. If it can be a joint maintained parcel, that'd be wonderful. But
Just enough land for the roads.
that's all we need is
Just that sliver.
I think Ryan was trying to make an interesting point in saying that we actually do need all of that existing capacity for
Well, but there's
stormwater
gonna be a lot
detention.
more with that available parcel now. That thing can just be, it can be moved to the south. It can be updated because it's not code. I mean, it's
And
prime.
obviously that's for the developer to think about in their design of the site, but I do
Well, I think
also,
it'd be a nice gift if we got something out of this deal, and I don't think that's asking too much, frankly.
I'm not saying you're asking
Okay,
anything at
I'm-
all. I just also wanted to point out that this property that's being developed, it already is required to do some other off-site stormwater detention. So I don't know that I would characterize it as a blank slate in terms of
Okay.
being able to put new detention on it. But, it's a possibility for the
If they
engineers.
have control of that parcel, isn't there enough detention area within that? I mean, how could you have to, you need, I don't know, I mean, off-site, it seems like you're getting a little bit of something for free.
I
I mean,
think
I'm
it's
sure there are
probably a
taxes,
question
there are
for the
right-of-ways.
developer's engineer. So I don't want to encroach on their territory too much with that. But I will say that with development, you do have to sort of strike a fine balance between what sort of amount of stormwater detention you need and how many units. I know we've been talking about density, how much density you're able to put in, and make that balance, make the stormwater work and have a profitable development. So I'll just leave it at that for now, so we can get back to some of the traffic discussion.
I don't know if you guys have any numbers, or I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, actually, I have Jason talk about, and I can do it with you, but and he can speak to you more specifically, but we're already burdened with a significant amount of offsite detention. We're required to manage more offsite detention than our project required detention, if that makes sense. So he can give you the specific acreage. So we're already heavily burdened. And the fact is, and again, I'm going to play engineer. So your stormwater, this has a detention pond. All our detention demand starts in this corner and ends in this corner. So having access to that has no value to us whatsoever, quite frankly.
But I think we can meet halfway. I know it can be done. There aren't any, there's nothing set in stone that there can't be some kind of a joint deal there, joint venture of sorts, right? I mean, we really.
Let me have Jason speak to some of the issues
Yeah.
specifically about the detention.
And I don't want, I mean, I can easily go on and on into the detail and
We'll make sure
so
you
I'm really gonna try to stay high level, but kind of as Front Range Village was developed. So we've got I remember the name of the trailer park.
Harmony Village.
Harmony Village. Harmony Village was developed without any detention. So they have in a 100-year storm event, everything we do is sized for a 100-year storm event. There's a significant amount of water that drains towards Front Range Village. Front Range Village has managed it to where it goes into that pond that's just south of Affinity. Affinity, that provides detention water quality for portions of Front Range Village, spills into Affinity, and then Affinity just passes it. They've got a level spreader that then passes it onto our site. And we end up having to manage that 100+ acres of stormwater runoff.
And so Harmony Village doesn't have any, right? They don't even participate in that.
Harmony Village actually has a lot of detention spread out through their site. It does.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That
Okay.
pond that's just south of Finney is actually quite a large pond.
So does Harmony, do they benefit from that pond, the one by Infinity?
Harmony Village owned all of this. And so when they developed, they master planned it, they set the stage for what we're going to be doing now.
I mean,
Obviously with the input of
I meant
master
Harmony
plans.
Village, the trailer.
I mean, Front Range Village is what I meant to
Right,
say.
Front Range Village. Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah, so they set the stage of how this stormwater is being managed, and we are left with the burden of cleaning up what's left.
Right, and that makes sense, because I know there's only so much.
So
It trickles down.
So as in, I know it's easy to look at, it's a big picture, but obviously this is somebody's property. And they're trying to make best use of the property that they can with what's out there. So it's really hard to make a successful project, and there's so many asks, there's so many asks of just in general with development. And so these guys are gonna be great neighbors, I promise you. They'll be
It's
great
gonna be a
neighbors.
beautiful development.
And the whole purpose of this meeting, just as a reminder, is that we're trying to get everybody's input to make that everybody's great neighbors. We're creating a place, we're creating a homes, or and so that's the full intent. But so I'm going away from the stormwater response, but
I'm wondering, Ryan, if it would be, because I know you put a lot of effort into this, your whole team, if we could, you want to pull up the options and at least try to get some, if we can get some.
Before we do that, can I ask that? Let's get back to the.
Okay, let's do this question. We'll do a brief overview of the scenarios because they're also in your handouts, and then we'll come back to.
So the middle yellow arrows up there, that's where you want to connect to Paddington, correct?
Yeah, so kind of going back several decades when talking about sort of the master planning for this area, originally Corbett, which is right here, was supposed to come up,
Right.
kind of do an S curve, and yes, kind of connect right here. And this is Paddington, so connect up to Paddington.
Which-
This is Edmonds, I believe.
Bar transplants and buildings, so it becomes right between more of our patio homes right there, correct?
It would, but also when you're developing within the city, the first one, they made the city made an agreement during approval not to do this one
Right.
during approval. And that's when we got the skateboard thing, which I called the skateboard. And then for the rest of it, they said they wouldn't continue this through. And that's kind of where it stopped at the
That's where we're
time.
still considering that.
No, well, pedestrian, they said, yeah, we,
Well, if we
It-
want the light at Paddington, that's where you say it will connect.
So yeah, that's kind of actually that really leads into
Now,
different
but
scenarios.
before we go there, I just want to say, could anyone consider putting the light at Paddington, but also instead of putting a fifth light, road, so that people can actually get to this new business and living situation at that one light, and without actually having to do Paddington, you could have it work. I know it's a little different, but I see it around different parts of Fort Collins and Loveland, where they have, it's a 5, and the light system works that way, and everybody could fit. Just a thought. Anybody ever consider that?
I'm saying having 5 Street.
5 Street, it's a 5 Street thing, yeah. So the lights just have to be timed a little.
I'm not familiar with that personally. I don't know if anyone has any discussion. Okay.
I think we've heard a couple new options here tonight, which is great. That's why we brought you all in here today, because you're the folks who are using this intersection daily. And what I'd like to do is kind of add those to the pot a little bit, have a discussion about now all 5 options. And we can kind of talk about the technical stuff, because I'm hearing a little bit of hesitancy from staff because we haven't really done all the research that we'd like to do to say, yes, this is a valid option. But we definitely want to hear your thoughts about them, so that if they do come up in studies and, oh, this is a great option, we know that that's the way you want to go.
So I'm just going to do a very quick overview of these scenarios. Again, they're on these handouts. You have them. Really just want to highlight though, I mean, again, we're talking, none of these, at least these scenarios that we're talking about, these 3, solve every issue. So there's trade-offs with all of them. And that's really helpful input for us, is like, I'd be willing to consider this, or this might be a hell no. That's the type of input we're looking for. So this first scenario, again, this is the idea of kind of with the major amendment. Could there be this privately funded light here at Hidden Pond?
It's actually option 2.
Yeah, on the handout, they're kind of transposed A and B. They're correct here up on the screen. So a light at Hidden Pond, there would still be just the bike and ped connection here between this ODP site and English Ranch. But that means that the Paddington and Ziegler intersection is going to remain unsignalized. There's just spacing issues. There can't really be 2 lights this close together. So the big trade-off with this one is, there is a light, so that allows for some better ped and bike crossing. It does help Hidden Pond. It does help this development. It doesn't really help with those left-hand turn movements for English Ranch and those users of Paddington, but it also preserves that there's no yes. And there's no kind of vehicular connection between those 2 developments.
So in all of these options you're going to discuss right now,
We're
in your base proposal, you had a channelized T-junction.
that's also one of the
But
scenarios.
is that included in all of these 3 or not?
It's not included in all those three. I don't know. I think there have to be more study if that could remain or not. There is, we'll get to that in scenario C.
Because in this scenario, that doesn't make sense. Right? If you put a light at hidden pond, there's no need for a channelized intersection.
Yes, I think that is one of the assumptions, as well as just, again, some of the spacing requirements needed for some of these different intersection types.
Yeah, if we do a line at Pin Pond, we're not doing a channel. There will be a
Okay.
secondary access we have.
And I'm just
Service road for target.
curious about distance between lights, because we have the light at Council Tree,
Right.
and then putting another light at Hidden
So close.
Pond, isn't that too close?
I don't know.
And the volume of traffic, right, that builds between the lights.
I think from a coordination perspective, these two are close enough together. Slight preference toward if it was a Paddington, progression's probably.
I was wondering, is there any way, I have the picture of the idea I have on my phone. Is there a way to put it up on the screen? Like if I
Ryan, do you want to try to finish your options and then?
Okay.
No, I'd like to show mine first because I think it overrules these.
I think it might take
before you get this
several
done.
minutes to get it up on screen. I know you brought some copies. Do you want to just kind of, can we pass them out to each table? Well, while we're doing that, just kind of wrap up these other scenarios. So option B is kind of a little bit of flip to the A, where there is the light there at Paddington that really helps English Ranch. But again, to really kind of warrant that, it would be nice if there was that full kind of intersection or full connection there. So bikes, pets, and vehicles as well.
Remember, we also have Woodland Park.
Yeah. Woodland Park.
Yeah, and I apologize, Woodland Park folks. I know, like on this particular map, you're not really represented on the side there.
So your scenario B doesn't match like.
Yeah, scenario A and B on the handout, they're kind of flipped.
Can you go back and explain, so the arrow in the middle that goes south,
This one,
yeah, what is that connected, what is that?
right now, nothing. But if Front Range Village ever redevelops, there's the potential to maybe do something there. It's unlikely again, because we're running into some detention areas right now on the Front Range Village side.
So it's there, but it's not really in.
It's bike ped.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, these master plans, that's what an
So
ODP
things
is.
that look like tire tracks are actually where cars go.
Yeah, so like the dotted lines, those are meant to be like the main access and connection points. And then kind of the dashed line, those are just representing different areas of different types of land uses.
Okay, thank you.
Don't we want to accept the traffic in that scenario? Because if that goes through, I'm never going out to see it.
I'm sorry, did you hear what?
The question is, so the neighborhood is concerned about traffic bleeding into the neighborhood, but are you willing to accept traffic from the neighborhood from the village? Because if this were to happen, I'm never going out to see it.
I'm not sure. I still am not sure.
So
I
he's gonna
understand.
drive through your
I think they're saying like, if this connection is here, all, maybe English Ranch residents and others are using this to get to Front Range Village. Are you willing to accept that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's a reality of things, and that's we're willing to accept it.
So this is your plan?
No.
Oh, I like this
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that English Ranch, it's not ideal, but they have exit points on Fourth Street. Woodland Park only has exits on Ziegler, but that's the only way to get out. And so you keep saying English Ranch and forgetting about Woodland Park. The light there at Paddington would really benefit this community that's been there for 20 years.
And again, I apologize that I'm leaving Woodland Park folks off.
I'm just trying to make the point, our only exit points are on to Ziegler.
Yeah, no,
And same for Hidden Pond.
it is a fair point. And what this is all kind of coalescing around is, kind of, if you think about kind of the ideal scenario, master planning, kind of transportation network. And this is why we have requirements in our land use code. We do want these inter-neighborhood connections because we want multiple access points for emergencies, so people can go to different arterials, so they can get to usually each kind of square mile, there's a school and a park and things like that. We want people to get to those without having to go to an arterial. From kind of the city perspective, how this broader area was set up is it would have been ideal to have that light there at Paddington. Obviously, when Front Range Village came in, that kind of, mixed some things up, and there was a really that concern. And council took that connection away, and it's kind of left things very undecided. And so that's why we're kind of here, kind of dealing with the messiness. Yes, you have a chance.
This may be a real oversimplification, and I know there are folks here that have lived in the neighborhood. We've been around for 6 years or so, have been here much longer than I. And I realize that the developer, it may be part of, you know, when you put in a development, we're offering this traffic light because here's the traffic patterns and stuff, but is it oversimplifying to say, rather than the developer putting a light in at Ziegler or at Paddington, take out the roundabout and put it in at Horsetooth and everybody would benefit? Or is that oversimplifying everything?
I don't know that we can answer that tonight, because I don't know if something like that has been studied
Is that,
just yet.
Emma? Yeah.
I sometimes thought the same. You know, because
Seems like
I
it should have
really
been
feel
studied
that-
last
that
year.
We only have
roundabout
one
is a
traffic light, right? I'm trying to think like, where do all, because I agree. I mean, I understand the new development, but Ziegler has so few people. And then when you think about the other two neighborhoods that have many more houses, like, how does everybody win? So why not Horsetooth and Ziegler? Just bam, put it in. And with,
And I think a lot of those, you know, as I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, that could happen in the future, but typically that is more driven by other types of development. So that Strauss Lakes proposal, if it moves forward, might be a trigger for something like that. But you know, we can add that idea and kind of.
but if it's
study.
privately funded,
Well, and I don't know the answer to this, but I assume there's quite a bit of additional construction that needs to happen to reconfigure the roundabout, which is just what
Making the right mention, the traffic light there won't stop. You can pick up our bus. Just keep going. Or it may make it difficult for us down the road to get out. We talked about, but yeah, it might help a little bit.
Okay, just briefly, we'll get to some more questions. Just want to do the final scenario here that, you know, if there's feedback on this. The scenario C, it's kind of the status quo. This is kind of what was originally approved, where there's, you know, individually, none of these intersections warrant a signal, but the ODP site, its main access off of Ziegler is using that channel IC kind of further south. So that's kind of what's kind of already in place with the ODP site. And so we've also heard some of these other ideas. We've heard kind of looking at, you know, further north at the roundabout, we've looked at the stormwater. We're gonna have to study and look at a lot more of those. We can't really answer those tonight, but were there other questions that we can get to? Yes.
So for clarification, right now, this project is not going to Front Range Village? Doesn't tie into it?
So it ties in the sense that there is an access point to Corbett Drive where there's kind of that cul-de-sac right now.
Okay.
So that's the only connection between this site and Front Range Village.
Okay. When it was originally done, there was a tie through that was originally put into the original master before this one, when Front Range Village was put in, and these owners who are selling it had it.
So this is, I'm not sure if this is the one you're referring to. This is another ODP from.
It was at the P and Z meeting when they approved Front Range Village.
Okay, I don't have the Front Range Village.
I was at it.
Yes. So yeah, this was, again, this is kind of a little bit of ancient history at this point, but this was an ODP for this kind of larger area, kind of northwest of Ziegler and Harmony. And so this is kind of originally showing that connection there up to what's now English Ranch. And when English Ranch went in, it had its own ODP. It also showed that connection. But again, this is what kind of was changed in 2010 when City Council removed that connection from the master street plan, and why we're still kind of dealing and struggling with this issue today. I know it's hard. Yeah, sorry.
What are the possible access points? Yeah, I mentioned like 6 points that I drew on there, but which are valid access?
Well, so and please correct me if I'm getting any of these street names wrong. So there's obviously there's Council Tree, there's the light there for Front Range Village. There's the service access.
Sorry.
Do you mean to Paddington?
Oh, to Paddington.
From the site to Paddington.
The only connection, well, that is sort of has been looked at seriously so far is this, you know, I think this is Edmonds right here. So kind of north-south, right there at Edmonds.
what are the pros and cons?
of other connection points.
Yeah,
there?
what's everybody saying about that connection?
I think that people's data is that the traffic going onto Paddington will then go left through the arc.
Well,
Can you do it, can you do a center,
Well, that's what my.
thing, even from there?
They would only exit.
No, because
They would have to go all the way, then they have to go all the way to the Ziegler.
I didn't quite hear it. Can you say it again?
Parking, bike lanes. I mean, it won't hold. It's not the right design for that type of traffic.
Why I was
So
thinking-
Paddington Road has
That's why I
three
was
different
thinking
design
it was
widths
be
right away.
further east.
And then if you look at
And
it,
then that way
it
there's
was,
nothing
it was
there.
changed 3 times in the city's
Yeah.
criteria.
Okay, hang on, we're kind of talking over each other. If we can raise our hands and, sir, I saw your hand in the back, go up first.
I'm no problem. As far as the scenario, having a light, having all traffic coming to the development from the south, and that's no alternative. Everyone that ends in that will have to go through the neighborhood and come back in there. Because of traffic, they're put in a predicament that we have, that we can't turn left.
We would consider right in, right out in that scenario, with like adequate or secondary access to allow them to come in and check that turn as opposed to doing that.
I mean, coming from the south.
In South, yes.
Everything turning across. Really, I let August is and I think the problem. Right.
I think there was a comment here and then we'll get back to you, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as far as the concern about the traffic on Paddington and stuff like that, if we could discuss his idea a little bit, make sure that everybody understands what he's saying. I think it solves a lot of these problems. And I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but it sounds like a lot of the concerns that people have could be addressed by that, right, without significantly affecting the flow on Paddington.
But the thing is, why do you have that connection?
Well,
I think
It's the only way they'll give us a light.
What?
it would. They're not traffic. But it's coming into a very controlled situation. As opposed to channelized T's are not there. The channelized T that's by Circle K, that one by Circle K, I think it's a bad example because it's so close to the intersection. Cars are already slowing down, people are kind of heads up. If you have that at that 45, 40 mile an hour thing, and if somebody's in a truck that doesn't have a good, over the shoulder view, those are sketchy. I mean, I can tell you, I was on the streets, I've driven my entire career, that's all I've ever done. Those things are disaster. If nothing else, road rage starters. I mean, they're just roads. So
Like we're saying to make that connection justify.
because it's a win-win, it helps people in part. My wife can't hear that perception when we're trying to get on the Ziegler, turn into market.
coming out of Woodland Park.
It's okay. It's absolutely.
I do want to get to this gentleman in the back who's been patiently
I
waiting.
just had a question on that. You had said right in, right out would be further down. Possibly, so there could be the development, might have just, if their light was at Paddington, there might be a right turn in further down to their development. Okay,
And we haven't.
that's fine, and I get, no, not that, I get why the developer probably isn't interested in that, the costs. I mean, the developer's trying to give us some options here and say, here's some things that he could do to help us in one way or the other that don't add significant costs, and I know they may not say this, but that your idea is gonna add a lot of cost to them, your idea is gonna add a lot of cost to them, and they may not be able to make that project.
Cost could be an issue. There's so much money being spent by the city of Fort Collins and other large projects. Don't worry about
I mean, remember, 700 units is very profitable. Bottom line,
Yeah.
this is.
Well, I think it's less profitable than maybe you realize, but
Then.
I mean,
That's
well,
right.
the question is, there's always that balance, and that's what we're here to try to do, is find what people are willing for, but,
I think we need to meet halfway on this. We're sacrificing.
Sure
So-
are.
We really are. It's just.
It's too expensive. Go somewhere else. Develop somewhere else.
Exactly, but this is a total.
Why ruin our neighborhood?
Well, we're trying to see if there's, I don't know if there's options here or scenarios here, whether what we shared tonight or some of these other ideas that we can continue to explore. Obviously, we don't have the answers to some of these new ideas raised tonight, and we're gonna have to consider. Any kind of other questions, kind of broader group? Maybe we can get into next steps. Obviously, there's more to research here, more to do. Okay, well, we'll kind of come back if there's any additional questions. Since we didn't kind of get into some of that small group discussion, I think what would be really helpful, obviously, we have this recorded, but we're going to kind of have the notes ready. If there are additional thoughts, if you want to leave, if you provided any comments, we would love to collect those. The plan is to kind of share those directly with the Planning and Zoning Commission if and when this project moves forward. You can also email any comments to devreviewcomments@fcgov.com, or you can jot down this phone number, and this goes to M, or you can, and she'll kind of pass it along to me, and we can kind of coordinate who's the best to respond to that. We are looking for feedback on these scenarios and new ideas. This is kind of what's going to help, kind of move us forward if there's some kind of preferred scenario.
So that, okay, then it's number 6 on this resources.
Yes,
That's right.
yep. If there are neighbors here that weren't here tonight, if you're part of a group that wants to talk about more about this, we would love to do that, because obviously we're here to gather input. So let me, actually, it's probably best if you kind of contact M, and we can kind of coordinate a meeting. Yeah, Joe.
Is there like a deadline? And so what's our next step, and what's the deadline to get there?
So the next step is, the ODP itself, those can move pretty quickly because they're high level. It's just kind of that bubble diagram, but there's a lot here to study with these new ideas and just kind of depending on what we hear from neighbors. So
I think they have a slide about decision making taking off.
So this is kind of after tonight, but we did record this meeting, so we'll post a link to this on YouTube, so you can pass that to others who didn't have a chance to come tonight. Depending on what kind of feedback we're hearing, what kind of research we're able to accomplish, there might be some more that we can kind of report back out for additional meetings. Again, we're happy to meet with folks individually too. The city, we do post updates on the development review website, which is linked on the handout you'll have. If and when this does move to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you'll also receive a mailed notice for that 2 weeks prior. And then again, we're really trying to encourage some specific input and comments on all of this. So we appreciate you all coming out tonight and sharing this feedback. Written comments are really helpful because we can just pass that on directly to the decision makers. Yeah, we can post it. Yeah, these slides.
Yeah, and if you're wanting any additional information, there was a conversation at the beginning of the evening about the traffic study. Reach out to me. I can get you all of that stuff if you want to take a look at it. It's very long. It's like, what, 80 pages or something? So we didn't print it out tonight, but it is available online for you to look at right now, and I can help you find it.
There's no more questions. Oh, yeah.
Just how much, just in general, how much does community input really count for how you move forward? Because I've been going to meetings, I've been on economic advisory commission for the city for a long time. And usually you guys in different departments have their ideas about what they want to do ahead of time. It doesn't matter what the community input is. That's typical for the city of work on. But how are you guys going to reach the community?
So, I mean, there's kind of 2 levels to this. So very broadly about, we're talking like development in general. So, as staff, we're not the decision maker, and we're kind of the facilitator of the process, and we do a review to see if it's meeting different codes and standards. So we do have a set of codes and standards, and if it's meeting those zoning standards, those other development standards, more likely than not, staff is probably going to provide that recommendation to the decision maker. But where kind of this community input and neighborhood input comes in with most development projects is, are there concerns? Are there ways we can mitigate it? Can we help improve it? Are there some win-win scenarios there? On this particular project and this particular issue about traffic and connectivity, at least the 3 scenarios we have more information on tonight in the slides, we're kind of prepared to move forward with any of them. And so you all are kind of in the driver's seat. This input we receive is kind of, I think, really going to push which way staff kind of recommends this. Obviously, it's still going to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're the decision maker on the proposal, but kind of what we hear, if there is sort of a consensus developing or a plurality, you know, that's probably really going to push us in a particular direction.
So if we were interested in his, have we discussed that enough that that could be something that we could possibly move forward with?
But that's where I don't know, because we need to study it a little bit more. I mean, there have been some preliminary discussions, and you know, I know there's some issues here about like, well, that's going to be costly, and that is probably a factor definitely for the applicants. From the city side, I think what we're going to be more concerned about is the impacts to existing stormwater we already feel is kind of undersized, which obviously can have health and safety effects. So.
I think we've heard.
Guys to do a show of hands, at least to see how many kind of lean forward something like that. Just
I'll start it.
We can do this, but I will put a huge caveat out here. We are not, you know, it is not, a decision is not being made tonight. And obviously we have a lot more information to kind of uncover.
I think it's pretty clear to us, just listening to you all, and I've been taking notes here, that this option is very appealing. And so we understand that, and we're fully ready to look into it. And if it works, I think, because you all have said that it's a potential win-win option, I think that would be something we would definitely consider, even without doing a vote.
The other side to that option, though, even kind of beyond some of the other issues raised, is this is not property the city controls or this developer applicant controls. And so it also takes English Ranch. Yeah.
I mean, you can modify it, right? Pick other access points.
Well, you know, the property owner, who I believe is the English Ranch HOA, would have to be involved. You know, they would have to have, you know,
I'll take care of that and get, just kind of see what they need to at least allow a study, allow feet on the ground to look at it, you know, without trespassing. Just go over there and say, yeah, this is feasible.
So if the HOA approves it, then you can move forward with the studies. Is that the stopping point, or is that?
I mean,
that dry?
honestly, I don't know the exact next step. I mean, we need to think about this and what that looks like. There's major input that's going to have to come from the applicant, because we can't necessarily require from our current development standards. You know, this would be sort of like, can we come together and find a solution? And honestly, I mean, I do want to be honest, there might be no solution. I mean, there might be some insurmountable stormwater issues. So just kind of putting everything out on the table, I want to be pragmatic and don't give false expectations.
If there were a light at Paddington and Grand Teton, would they also put a crosswalk so you could get across the street walking?
Yes, I'm gonna say yes, but yeah.
Any signalized intersections like that, we would put accessible crosswalks that can get across.
Did I see another hand? Okay. So I think the other thing is, if you're really interested in kind of keeping up to date, again, I don't know the next steps and the exact timeline here. If you've left any comments, and I would also recommend leaving your email address, and I can kind of start maybe like a newsletter or something like that for specific updates. So if you're willing to do that, any kind of paper.
We also have the signage.
Yeah.
Our comment cards to
Yeah, so over there we have a sign-in sheet. We have this document that some of you already grabbed with important links, as well as my contact information. We also have a copy of the placemat. If you wrote on yours, if you want to leave it behind, but you also want to take one, we have more that are clean. And we have the comment cards. So there's tons of goodies over there. We'll kind of let you guys trickle out at this point, but if you have more questions, feel free to throw them at us.
So if we signed in with our email address, will that automatically put us on a list for this?
For this project, yes, I think that would be
Yeah.
a good idea.
And it's going to be, you know, this is kind of like a one-off little informal type thing. We do have some other newsletters about all text development in Fort Collins, but I'll kind of create one for this particular project. And, you know, when we send any updates out, it'll be kind of blind copy, so you're not getting spammed with other email addresses. So yeah, as I mentioned, we'll kind of release it to the wild. We've got a lot of staff here. If you have, other questions, you want to just come up and chat with us. Thank you all for coming tonight.